Together, we will make America strong again. We will make America wealthy again. We will make America proud again. We will make America safe again. And yes, together, we will make America great again.
A dog whistle is a type of training instrument used to produce an extremely high frequency that, while mostly inaudible for the vast majority of humans, is extremely audible for our canine friends. Now, I know what you may be thinking. It's the same thing I was thinking. Doesn't it seem like a little bit of a cruel method of training dogs? Well, yeah, it probably is. It probably is a safer, method of training dogs. Unlike its actual counterpart, political dog whistles aren't painful to the dog's ears in any sort of way. Instead, like a siren song, political dog whistles kind of lure its subjects, to a place where they can feed off their own biases and are very easily misled to believe something that the person using the dog whistle wants to get across. So, basically, and speaking about politics or anything, when we talk about dog whistles, we're talking about specifically a coded message that for people outside of the message's target base doesn't warrant any sort of suspicion. But for the target base, it's understood to be symbolic of something else. And what this does is that dog whistles give the person who's using the dog whistle a chance to always have plausible deniability away from whatever it is that they were saying, or being accused of promoting. To understand how dog whistles work, we kind of have to understand how they came about and how common of usage they are in society, so to speak, nowadays. So let's take a look at, a chip in the time machine and go back to a time in American politics at around the 1960s and the 1970s. The 60s was a time of fundamental cultural change in America. The civil rights movement brought a variety of social justice factors to the forefront of American political action, and as a natural result, as these things tend to be, a reactionary movement against the social justice became its main opposition. Now, with the passing of the Civil Rights Act in 1964 by President Johnson, racist politicians were kind of forced to change up their game plans when engaging with electoral politics. No longer could, inflammatory slogans or phrases such as, very famous situation, George Wallace, segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. You can't say that type of stuff anymore. There are laws protecting against that type of speech for American citizens, for minorities now. So what happened is that in time, racist politicians realized that the best way to push their controversial issues were to push issues that didn't really seem to reflect the controversial issue in any sort of way. And this can honestly best be summarized by an at the time anonymous quote from a former Republican strategist and former advisor to both President Ronald Reagan and President George H.W. Bush, Lee Atwater. And I'm going to read to you Lee Atwater's quote, which again was anonymous at the time of him saying that. You start out in 1954 by saying nigger, nigger, nigger. By 1968, you can't say nigger. That hurts you, backfires. So you say stuff like forced busing, states' rights, and all that stuff. You're getting so abstract now. You're talking about cutting taxes. And all these things you're talking about are totally economic things. And as a byproduct of them is that blacks get hurt worse than whites. And subconsciously, maybe that is a part of it. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that if it's getting the abstract and that coded, that we are doing away with the racial problem one way or the other. You follow me? Because obviously sitting around and saying we want to cut this is much more abstract than even the busing thing, and a hell of a lot more abstract than saying nigger, nigger. Now, I know that quote kind of seems kind of cartoonish, and I assure you that is a very real quote by someone who was very, a personal advisor to two Republican presidents, by the way. Completely spilling the beans about commonplace Republican strategies in terms of dog whistling. And the thing about dog whistling, as I said before, it is so difficult to actually pinpoint, just like what Lee Atwater said. You're talking about issues that don't fundamentally seem to people who aren't like entrenched in politics to be affecting minorities, to be anti-minority, to be anti, XYZ marginalized community. And because of that, it always gives the person plausible deniability. Like, let's again take the situation of Richard Spencer. Richard Spencer is a Nazi. There's a 110% absolutely no doubt about that. Richard Spencer is also very aware of the fact that people in America in this day and age don't like Nazis. He also knows that no mainstream media would ever let someone openly identifying as a Nazi on television to talk about their ideology. So instead, what Richard Spencer does is that he, instead of calling himself a Nazi, he calls himself a white identitarian. Now, no one knows what that word means because, that's the point. The word isn't actually supposed to mean anything. People aren't, the white identitarian movement isn't something that is deeply historical. It's just a term that is synonymous with the same principles, ideas, and things like that of Nazis, of white nationalists, of white supremacists. But what his repackaging of this phrase does, this dog whistle, which is the word, which is what I would apply to white identitarianism. It is a dog whistle. What this does is it allows him to do two crucial things. One, he's repackaging the ideology so that it can be far more marketable for a larger audience. And this way he can get on TV, which he has done. He's gone on CNN and just say, hey, I'm not a Nazi. I just believe in insert, political platform that is literally virtually identical to that of the Nazis here. And secondly, what it does is that he's able to distance himself from literally any sort of accountability that the consequences of him platforming his ideology could naturally occur. And at that point of Richard Spencer going on TV, making the case of white identitarianism and saying, just literal Nazi talking points and having Nazi goals, it really doesn't even matter how, questioning Richard Spencer, talking about, poking holes in his, platform and his philosophy and calling it out for what it is. It doesn't matter that you call out and say, hey, how are you going to form a white, nationalist state when there are, millions of minorities who don't really seem that keen on just upping and moving to a continent that has absolutely no sort of no value whatsoever. What are you going to do? How is that going to work? At that point, it doesn't matter. And obviously, the answer to that is that Richard Spencer doesn't care about black people going back to Africa. He wants to kill black people. You think people like Richard Spencer are going to stop at just taking over America? No, they have world conquest plans. America is just one step of it, okay? After they get rid of all the black people in America, they're going to say, well, why let all the black people have all those precious resources over in Africa? It doesn't matter. But at that point of him going on CNN, saying all his ideas, it doesn't matter if you call it out, because the message has already been sent out. With the very nature of dog whistles and our, attempt to combat them, we're going to constantly, as progressives, have to make judgments of people's character. And this could be problems for a lot of reasons. Like, every single person is susceptible to their own bias. The left already, we all as leftists probably know this. We have a tendency as leftists to sort of assume that if we disagree with someone right away, they're being malicious, they're being evil, they're purposely trying to mislead you, you know what I mean? We have a tendency to do that as leftists. That being said though, an old teacher's aide once told me, the famous, phrase, I'm sure you've heard it before, if it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, and, looks like a duck, it probably is a duck. Could that person have not been racist when he's talking about the rights of libertarian business owners and that they should have the right to discriminate against whoever they want, and he's bringing that up as a counteract when you were talking about the civil rights movement. Were they intending to be a racist? Maybe not. But At the same time, I'm a consequentialist. I don't give a fuck about what your intention is. I care about is if the consequences of your ideology is other people being hurt. Is it other people having to be lower on the proverbial totem pole? That's my problem. So basically, to summarize this video, if you're a person of color walking in the woods late at night and you stumble upon a bunch of men dressed up in white sheets, they could be having some sort of weird ghost orgy, but regardless, you should probably turn around and run away as fast as you can without looking back.
I'm kind of a symbol.